Hey guys, coming with the question of the week here. So, question of the week is: at what times in your life are you the happiest and why? So, for me, this is, well, I was going to say that it's hard, but it's actually kind of easy too, which is because there's a lot of happy times in my life. I mean, for the most part, I was pretty happy my whole life, um, minus Tanner's accident where he passed away. That would be the only time period that I can remember thinking those 2 or 3 years, that was brutal, right? That was hard to do, and every year that went by of that, right? So the first year I was like, "Ooh, that is hard. I'm depressed and miserable." And the second year I'm like, "Oh, I think I'm good." And then the third year you're like, "Oh, I wasn't good second year." But third year I was kinda getting back to it, and, after 3 years, you kinda learn to get not over it, but you get through it, right? But back to the question of what were the happy times. Um, I probably got 2, 3, or 4, happy, um, at what times in your life. So the first one that comes to my mind, and that's what this video is gonna be about, is and I'm gonna do the other ones as well in separate videos, so these will be 3 or 4 videos maybe, because why not? Who cares? And then I can kinda talk further about why those times were happy instead of try to jam them into 3 minutes. But anyway, the easiest time for me would be when the time that I was age 8 to age 16, living in Heatherwood in Blue Springs, Missouri. So growing up, right? I grew up on the south side of Blue Springs more, over by Daniel Young and Cordell Mason elementary schools. And there were a couple kids in that neighborhood, and it was great. Les Smith was my closest friend, and we kind of hung out every day and did stuff. And we hung out with his older brother, Chad Smith, and this other guy named Kevin that he kind of hung out with. And they kind of let us tag on a little bit, but not so much. But we kind of did our own thing, and it was fun, right? I mean, I didn't know any different. They had we had a creek just down the street, and there were some good bike trails and like jumps on it. I mean, like big jumps, like jumps that I never went over, right? They were probably 2 feet tall. They looked like they were 6 feet tall to me at the time, and so I was like, "No." I would there are hills, of dirt that were piled up, and so you could go over the side, and it wasn't as big as everybody else. All the big kids, like, went up right over the middle, but I never did that, but that was fun. But then in 4th grade, summer before 4th, I think, so we moved up to the north side, to Heatherwood, and all of a sudden, it was kinda like everything, yeah, it was awesome is what it was. So, up the street, so it was Josh and I, right? But then up the street was a family called the Words. It was Christian, Jason, and Ryan. And then next door neighbor was Vance Bobinet. He had a sister, Nicole, that was younger. She didn't come out and play stuff. But and then next to the Words, there was a kid named Mark Wasson. He liked to play sometimes. He didn't play as much as we did. He did a lot of fishing. It's funny because we look back and go, "Man, Mark sure loves to fish. He should do that for a living." And he's a professional fisherman, like endorsed and makes catches the biggest fish and has a big check that's humongous for $120,000 kind of thing. So that was what he was supposed to do. So it was great for him. But then down the street, we had a guy named Steve McCartan, and he was up in our neighborhood. uh, I'm not going to say every day, but man, just about. And then later, a couple years later, we had a kid named Philip Colson come in, and he was my age, and Carl Calcara come in our neighborhood, and he was my age as well. So next thing you know, we had 10 guys, that were into sports and wanted to play sports. I mean, that's when I say sports, I just mean playing, right? I mean, of course, the majority of our time we played baseball, basketball, football. That was just what we played. But we played everything from, I mean, frisbee football to jumping on the trampoline, playing crack the egg. I broke my finger doing that. It's the only time I've broken a bone was on the trampoline. To building forts, to going down to the creek, to sledding, to snowball fights, to camping out, to lemonade stands and selling vegetables on the side of the road. But there was just all that stuff. But it was perfect because everybody was within, I mean, I think the greatest age disparagement must have been Christian to Ryan. So they were brothers. And Christian was 2 years older than me, and Ryan was 2, maybe 3 years younger than me, probably 3. So 5 years total distance, and the majority of us were, I mean, me, Steve, Jason, Carl, Phil were all same age, right? I mean, within a year. And then Christian and Vance were just a year older, but it was great because the words had a pool, right? And so that was awesome. So we could go up there and swim. And we actually took lessons before we even moved into that neighborhood from Jim Word, just because we had heard he was a great swim teacher. And so we all learned to swim from Jim in that pool. So then next thing you know, we live down the street from him and we swim in that pool, 3 or 4 times a week. But then the Bovinets next door, then they got a pool. So then we had another pool to go to in case, Jim and Judy Word were like in their pool by themselves and didn't want us, 10 kids jumping around. They were trying to relax because they were teachers. So they were home all summer too. And so now we had a pool we could go to if Jim and Judy were like, no, no, get out of here. In the same way I would be if I was an adult, I'd be like, oh, come on, go somewhere else. Give me 2 hours to sit out by the pool. But so we could go to a couple pools, but they were building tons of houses, in the back of the neighborhood, like where Carl Calcari ended up living. And so you could go there at night and like steal wood and steal screws and nails. And so we would take all their wood and we would take a few pieces of wood, build forts. And yeah, we would try all sorts of stuff. It was a mess. So we'd try to stay the night in a fort and it never worked because, they were horrible. But we stay in tents, is what we do because Vance Bovinet next door had an awesome tent. But once they put a pool in, he didn't have a place to put it. So we'd bring his tent over to my house, put it in the back, and then we would, spend the night in there. And Christian Word would tell ghost stories and scare everybody to death. He was good at that. Um, and we would go out and hide from the cops, even though the cops weren't trying to find us. But every car that came by, we're like, oh, I think that could be a cop. We scatter. And you're like, yeah, it's just a guy going to the grocery store probably at 10:30, but we thought we were out late. But but the whole thing about it, that whole time growing up, it was just so fun because we just played. We just played every day, all day, from 8:30. There was a time that my mom said you can't call before, and I think maybe it was 9. Maybe it was 9 o'clock. I mean, 9 o'clock if Jason or Ryan didn't call Josh and I to get out. Hey, we're coming out for baseball. I mean, the other one was calling, and you just went, right? And everybody just started showing up, and Steve all of a sudden started walking up the street, and he'd come out and play, and Vance would come out and play, and sometimes we played soccer, and sometimes it could be anything, but we just played all the time, and then we also rode our bikes everywhere, right? We'd sometimes ride them to other you know people's houses. Well, you'd have to ride your bike to Phil's house. He had the trampoline, so right when he moved in and he had a trampoline, man, we were at his house constantly, um, because that was so fun, especially back in, yeah, I can't imagine when that would be, 88, 87. Man, that was cool to have a trampoline. So we played on that a lot for a year. So that was fun. But then we would go up to 7-Eleven, which is up the street probably, I don't know, half a mile, something like that. So we go up there. It was funny, Christian always the smartest guy of the group. We'd all go into 7-Eleven and buy baseball cards and snacks, buy Twinkies or a pop or something. We'd steal, $1 from my dad's change drawer. We'd go up there and get that, and Christian would be like, "Well, I'm gonna go over to Food Barn," because that was the name of the grocery store right up the street. Price Chopper eventually, came in and took over, but real marketing geniuses at that grocery store company, the Food Barn. But he would go get like a pear, or later on, guys learned that they'd have the little fruit out where you could take it for free. But Christian would buy a pear for like 8 cents, and we're like, that's pretty smart. I just spent $1.20 on a thing of Twinkies. He got a pear, and and then also went over to the little take a piece of fruit if you're a kid. We would take an apple. and they had a vest machine that had like three flavors. It was like orange, root beer, and something else. And I think they were 10 cents, right? So you could go into Food Barn, practically with a quarter and come out with a couple pears, an apple, and two cans of pop, and it was a quarter. Yeah, funny memories that you have. But it was that kind of stuff, right? It was riding your bikes all over town, telling your parents that you were going to go up to 7-Eleven, and then deciding to go all the way down the middle of Blue Springs. Go to McDonald's, go to all those kind of places. Excuse me, and just keep going, right? And then come back, and they didn't know any different because they didn't know where we were for 5, 6, 7 hours sometimes. Once you had lunch at noon, you'd you'd go get lunch at noon. At 12:30, you're back out. I mean, you might not go back home till 6:30 till your mom said dinner's ready, or somebody's mom said dinner's ready, right? I mean, we ate a lot of time at the Bobinettes, or somebody would have something, and you're like, ah, sure, yeah, come on in, you guys eat here. So it was just really easy. It was just really fun. If I had to sum it up, it was just like the movie Sandlot, right? They played baseball, they got in adventures, right, with the beast and the baseball that they tried to had to recover. So you had all those things, where somebody got hurt. Ryan Ward went over a ramp and went over his handlebars and straight onto the ground and had to have his mouth wired shut. And yeah, it was a mess. And Christian got hit by a truck up trying to cross Seven Highway one time, and I broke my finger. And there's always something going on. And Vance tore down, tried to, the Evans mailbox was third base. And he tried to stop at third base when he knew he couldn't make it home. He was going to get thrown out. And he grabbed it and ripped the freaking whole mailbox down. Had to walk up and say, "Hey, here's your mailbox." So all that kind of stuff that happened, it was just fun all the time. And it happened. You got up at 9 o'clock and you started and you ate lunch and you ate dinner. But besides that, you were out playing, you were doing everything. And then it hit 8:30 or 9 and it started getting dark, and we'd like be in this lull where we couldn't do anything because it was too dark to keep playing baseball or football because you couldn't see, but not dark enough yet that you could play flashlight tag. So we play flashlight tag till 11 or 11:30 in the summer, every night, right? Like every single night over the course of like 10 houses. Right? So it was hard to find people. It's hard to be it. Sometimes you're it for an hour and a half. But man, that was sure fun. It was just constant. And then you might spend the night, but we didn't actually spend the night at each other's houses that often, mostly because I think our parents are like, no, you don't need to spend the night at the Word's house because you've just got done playing with them for 14 straight hours. Just go to sleep and then go do it again tomorrow. And so that's what we did. I mean, I just don't remember. I remember Mark Lawson spending the night more than anybody because he didn't maybe play as much, but not other people like Ryan and Jason didn't really. I mean, Vance did. We were next door neighbors, so they're right there. What we're gonna do? So we were staying out till 11:30 anyway. We were 12 years old, 14 years old, 10 years old. So it was time to come in and go to bed. But that was just if I have to answer that question, what times in your life were you happiest and why? That's a time in my life that I was just happy. It was just fun. It was just There's not a care in the world. There wasn't anything bad. I mean, even when I broke my finger and I couldn't swim or play baseball or basketball or anything for a month and a half, which felt like forever, it was still just hilarious being around and making fun of people and joking and being the umpire at baseball and football. And everybody kind of took their turn as they had these injuries or they couldn't do things. And so yeah, just a whole lot of fun the entire time. So that's that's my answer.